So I want to share with you a little vision, which is actually kind of fun to think about because just last night, less than 24 hours ago, I was in this room breaking fast with the Manara Muslim community and a few of our community members and a sweet couple from the Unitarian community. And as the prayers were happening for the breaking of fast, which Ramadan began this past week, and I was in prayer myself, listening to these beautiful Arabic songs and chants and prayers. And I just began to get weepy. I just was boo-hooing for the good that had blossomed into my life through all of the comings and goings of this community, all the comings and goings of the pandemic, all the things that seemed like, what in the actual F? For the last couple of years, I sat in this room listening to prayers in Arabic, boo-hooing for the greater good that bloomed in my garden that I didn't even know I needed. Right? For the good that has just burst into being through relationship and connection with this sweet Muslim community who found their way to us through beautiful circumstances out of hardship. Without a building, without a place to be in community, and found their way to us. And we got to be answered prayer for them. And last night they were answered prayer for me. This is how it works. When we choose to keep our vision on the greater good, we may not exactly know what's getting ready to pop through the soil. We see something, we see like, what's that? Did I plant that? Anybody do that? You garden and then forget you planted something somewhere? You forgot to label it? That's me all the time. And so now I'm just in the habit of being curious, like, ooh, let's see what's coming. I don't remember what I put there. And that's kind of the nature of prayer. And if we can keep ourselves in the vision of the greater good, in the feeling of the greater good, it can meet us, it can show up in our garden in these amazing, unexpected, baby-voiced ways. Thank you, William. We are so going to miss you, my friend. Because what we need to stay close to is that sensation, right? What we need to stay close to is not necessarily the picture we have in our mind of what it's supposed to look like, but of the feeling of good. The feeling of good is what is actually uplifting and increasing and raising the frequency that we are vibrating at, that then attracts a greater good that matches that frequency. This is how metaphysics work. But you and I can sometimes get caught up in the mechanics of how it works, right? We can get caught up in the mechanics and the science of how it works and lose the very juicy power of how it works, which is actually happening in your very body. You know, the science of this vibrational frequency that you are trying to raise so that you can experience greater good is actually unfolding in your very flesh. The frequency and vibration of you is what it is that is uplifting. And every time you find a way to the feeling of your vision, the feeling of your greater good, the feeling of greater good for you and your communities, the feeling of greater good for your beloveds and your family and your neighborhood and your world, all starts in your body. And that's also the place where you get to have intimate understanding of what greater good means to you. Where you get to have intimate understanding of what vision feels like in your being. Intimate understanding, like how I watched your faces while you were dreaming. And it went from very serious dreaming meditation faces 2. All these gentle smiles started spreading throughout the room. That is the practice of metaphysics. That. It is actually not super complicated. You do not necessarily have to do a 27.5-minute alpha, theta meditation to get the brain waves. You need to smile. You have to embody the vision in your being through your own feelings and sensations so that your cellular structure can shift. It's not so my cellular structure can shift. It's not so your neighbor's cellular structure will shift, even though you want them to. You would like to magic wand some neighbors, huh? If I come up with the magic wand solution, I'll keep you posted. But here's the thing, that this vibration and frequency that you and I have agency over. The good news is that frequency is never just mine. Because the further out it vibrates, now my frequency is all up in Ben's frequency, and Jim's frequency, and Dre's frequency. Which means I have the opportunity, when I am vibing high, to invite them into a high vibe just through the frequency. I don't have to say nothing. Because Ben's atoms go, okay, that feels like a party. I'm going over there. Let me lift up there. That's fun. It doesn't even have to be a conscious thought, right? But it starts with knowing how it feels to move towards greater good. It starts with taking the vision into the being. And in the world of gardening, which we talked a little bit about last week, which this is sort of the part 2 of. You know, I don't know if any of you are diehard gardeners like I am, but, you know, I start planning and designing. I have like software and everything to design what I'm going to put in the garden this coming year. And I start doing that in the winter. Because when I'm looking outside and there's like nothing to plant, it's not time yet, and I'm like, I want to put some things in the ground. I remember to rest, because that's what winter's for. But I play on my designing software. Ooh, I could put that there and that next to that. Ooh, that would be so pretty. And they love that one. Ooh, they'd be good. And I just go to town design. And then I go through my seeds. What seeds do I have? What seeds do I not have? Hold that thought. And I begin to see the landscape of my new garden. And then I look out the window at the reality of my garden at the moment. Oh, I never cut down the dead stuff from last year. Oh, crap, that whole bed over there needs to be mulched. Oh, I don't even know how that got into the garden. I don't even know what bird pooped that there, and now I got to get it out. The reality of my garden. So we talked a little bit last week about what are those things in your garden that need to be removed so that the design, the new way of being, can be put into place. What in your being interrupted you while you were dreaming? Did anybody get interrupted while they were trying to dream of their good? Hi, welcome to meditation of any kind. Just so you know, you are winning at meditation when you become aware of the interruptions. So thank you for those of you who raised your hands. You have to know what's interrupting you. You have to know the nature of the interruptions. You have to know the nature of like what's like pulling you away from what it is you're trying to create. Because then you got to be like, oh, that's what, oh, maybe that interrupts me a lot. That particular thought, that particular idea, that particular feeling. I got interrupted by some back pain just now. And I was like, I am not trying to add you to the list, back pain. What? And yet my wholeness, which is the whole garden, weeds and all, includes some back pain right now. So I get to then attend to the back pain, which is what I know for sure is the design is happening. I don't let go of my vision. But because I don't let go of my vision, I'm aware of what's in the way. And what must be taken out of the way, what barrier must be brought down so that my vision can come into being. But here's the thing that I think we do sometimes. Somebody was just telling me recently, I won't tell who, that they have a maybe embarrassing amount of self-help books. Anybody else? Go ahead. We know. Because what happens when we begin to do this deep work is it is earnest, it is sincere. We are doing deep work. We are moving towards our greater good. And then we see how many weeds are in the garden and we get obsessed with the weeds. And we forgot that we were growing a beautiful garden. Now our whole job is weeding. Your whole job is growing a beautiful garden. Get a couple tools that are really good at taking weeds out and keep it moving. So I want to share from a spiritual director from Still Point. She was talking about weeding. And she said, weeding is an art. You have to keep at it. You have to pull the whole root or the weeds will spring forth again. The second round seems more vigorous than the first. You have to pull slowly to disengage the root from the soil. Wet soil releases roots better than dry soil does. So I want to stop there for a minute. Wet soil releases roots better than dry soil does. My gardeners, you with me on that? Right? After a rain, you're like, let me get out there. I'm getting all them mustards, all of them. Nourished soil, loose and fertile and abundant soil more easily gets rid of weeds than dry, unattended soil. The soil is where we put our attention. It is the soil that grows beautiful things. If you could pull all the weeds you want to pull, you could go about the whole world pulling weeds. You will not grow a garden. You will have pulled a bunch of weeds. Soil health is what allows for the most abundant, intentioned garden. When there's really strong soil health in the gardening world, that means pests are less likely to destroy your plants. Did you know that? Because the healthier your soil, the stronger your plants, and they're more able to deal with pests and harsh weather. What does that sound like? A healthy, nourished soul, heart, mind, is more able to deal with the pesty BS in the world. Nobody said the pesty BS was going away. Very likely in the midst of an apocalypse, it will continue to increase. Your soil, your soul health will give you the capacity to continue to grow the garden of your dreams, regardless of pesty BS. The spiritual director from Still Point went on to say Weeds appear in the spiritual landscape too. And they often show up when I least expect them in places that I think are weed-free. Like the garden weeds, I have to recognize them and carefully disengage them. These days, the daily onslaught of news feels weedy. I can't pull those weeds, but I can try to keep them from seeding and spreading within me. Your soil determines what it is you will cultivate into blossoming. And your attention on your soil, your attention on your dream, your attention on what it is you are trying to cultivate and bring forward is the best medicine for the weeds. It's not paying attention to the weeds that is going to keep the weeds from messing up your garden. It is surely not paying attention to the weeds that is going to grow your dreams. It is paying such profound, generous attention to your dreamed garden, to your soul health, that will allow you to quickly go, ooh, weed, bam, all right, moving on to my dream. It is in the understanding of what it is you are allowing to seed and spread in your consciousness. And it's just math, right? I mean, much of metaphysics is really just math. The more attention you put towards the thing that you are cultivating, the more you're going to get that. But if you get so distracted by that weed that just sprouted in your garden that you forget that there's all of this other garden needing your attention, all the good things that are growing, and now you are obsessed with the mustard weeds. Anybody mustard weeds here in Albuquerque? It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. But if I only think about mustard seeds, what do you imagine I'm going to grow a whole bunch of? Mustard weed. But here's what I can tell you. Not a nary a mustard plant in my vegetable beds right now. Not a nary one. They can have the driveway. I could care less. Because I'm working on my vegetable garden. That's where my attention is. I don't even think about mustard weeds over there. I don't even have a thought process. If I see one coming, I don't even get all the way down. It's just gone. Because it's not getting my attention. Right? My new perennial kill plant, however, is getting a bunch of attention. It's so pretty. You getting me? You can come get as much as you want, Tanley. You drive that driveway more than once. You have them. Have them. And that's actually another really good point. It's my intention that decides what's a weed and what is wanted. Tanley loves her some mustard weed, so she gets to have all the mustard weed. I don't want it in my vegetable patch. It doesn't make mustard good or bad, does it? My vision. Your vision. You decide what it is you want to grow and cultivate and stay minded on. The other thing our Still Point teacher points out, her name is Carolyn Ash. Other things are weedy too, she went on to say. Those things that I imagined separate from the wonder of creation and the Creator. This is where we get tricky. Which is why I wanted you to spend a minute getting intimate with what it feels like to dream about your good. To vision for greater good. Because you need to know the difference between that feeling and all the ways you separate yourself from the divine. And they should feel very different. All the ways that you begin to trick yourself into thinking you are separate from this thing called creation. that you are separate from life itself, the body of the divine, you and I don't think really ground ourselves in the truth that we are nature, like literally nature. You know, we can see from the climate crisis that we have forgotten that we too are nature. But the root of that misbelief started when you thought yourself less than divine. The root of any sense of separation between humanity and nature itself started with the belief that we are separate from God. Because if you and I espouse to believe that there is only one, and that this manifest body called life, called creation, called the planet Earth and beyond, is divine, then there cannot possibly be separation between me and the soil, between me and the bugs, between me and the trees, and between me and the atmosphere itself. The only way that separation can happen is in our mind, in mistaken belief. And I believe it is the root of all ill in our entire existence on this planet. And you and I need to know, as metaphysicians, as spiritual people, as people who are attempting to create a life that works for me and a world that works for all, must understand the difference between oneness and separation all the way down to the bottom of that root. And we got to know what it feels like. And I am telling you, the very thing that makes climate crisis possible is exactly the same as you having a self-depreciating thought. Exactly the same. Any mistaken idea of separation is at the root of anything out of alignment with love and good. Period. Which means the finger pointing serves nobody. Until that finger is pointing right back to you. So I want you to take a moment. We're going to do some reflection and introspection again. I want you to take a moment. And before we dive into the yucky feelings, remember what it feels like to vision your good. So see that beautiful garden. Feel what it feels like to grow all the beauty and joy and abundance and love and peace and harmony in your being. And then I want you to notice the weeds. I want you to notice what interrupts you. What are the thoughts that are coming right now that seem to be getting in the way of your dream? Is there something in particular that you just can't stop thinking while you're dreaming? Is there a particular image or person's face who keeps popping in your mind? And you're like, get out of my garden. Those are your weeds. And they're in the way. And again, we are not going to invite them to take up our entire attention, but we are going to allow ourselves to be aware. Aware of what's crowding out your beauty. Be aware of what's stealing nutrients from your dream. So you can correct it and get on with your dreaming. So this is the part where I'm going to ask you to be courageous. And I want you to shout out, tell me what kinds of things you might be on the lookout for in your dreamy garden? I'll give you some ideas. Judgment. Are you judging yourself and others? Jealousy. Otherness. Negative thoughts. Any particular ones you want to share? I get it. I get it. Good. Don't give it your attention, Ben. Judgment. Fear. Anxiety. Not enough. Doubt. Limitation. Limitation. That's right. That's right. And you bring a good point, because all of these things that you all just shouted out, not only are they weeds and low vibe, right? Just to say it frankly, not the vibration that is going to create the garden of your dreams. But then they get really messy, like my friend just said. That judgment then leads to me getting into weird, funky, negative stuff with this dude over here. And next thing you know, your entire vegetable bed is now crowded with weedy crap that you don't want. Because now you're giving your attention to the judgment. You're giving your attention, all the thoughts of like, he's such a jerk face. You're sprouting more of that. You're sprouting more of that. And then you don't know why your life is beginning to look a certain way. Your relationships are beginning to look a certain way. And it's dude's fault. But the root of that was your judgment. Because here's the thing, this is not about pointing fingers. This is not about blame. Oh my God, this is not about beating yourselves up. So I want no prayer requests or emails this week about how terribly you are consciously being. None of this is for that purpose. If there's one thing you hear me say tonight, you put your attention on the dream. Period. You put your attention on the greater good that you are moving into being. The weeds are a side note, are a footnote. You read the footnotes, but they're not the book, right? That's how I want you to treat the weeds. They do not get center stage. And when you find yourself getting center stage, I want you to do a spiritual practice. So one of the things I wanted to invite you to do this week, and actually through the next several weeks, the next 4 weeks, is to participate in Ramadan with our campus mates, the Manara Muslim community. But here's why, and here's how this relates to your garden. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, says, since the divine must hold us as some part of its eternal perfection, we are fulfilling our destiny when we think of ourselves as already divine and perfect. To contemplate the divine life, which is at the very center of everyone's life, this is the very essence of mental healing. So in our teaching, we teach spiritual mind treatment for the purposes of, I'm air quoting, healing, because actually I don't believe in healing. All we're ever doing is revealing more truth, because nothing has ever gone wrong. We are just revealing more truth. So we're going to call it revealing. The very essence of revealing your dreamy, wonderful, amazing garden and creation in your life is dependent on contemplating the divine life, which is the very center of everyone's life. Yes? Not the weeds, my friends. Not the barriers. We're not contemplating barriers. We're removing barriers. That's a quick job. And very, 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 very important to understand is the how of contemplating that the divine is the very center of your life and every life on this planet and all of creation itself is the way you weed your garden. Yes? So every time you get interrupted, every time the thoughts of judgment come, every time the thoughts of not enough come, every time the thoughts of limit come, every time the thoughts of jealousy come, every time any of those crapple and not wanted thoughts come, contemplate the divine as the very center of your life. Contemplate the divine as the very center of dude's life. That is actually consciously weeding your dream. Yes? Do you hear the difference? It's not like we're going to just la, 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 la. I didn't have that thought. I didn't have that thought. I didn't have that thought. Yes, you did. And now choose a new one. Again and again and again and again. Just like you do when you weed a garden. And you know what happens when you weed a garden that way? Especially a newer garden, where it seems like the weeds are winning. You weed and you weed and you weed and you weed and you keep cultivating the thing that you're trying to grow, whatever it is you're trying to grow, and you weed and you weed and you weed, and they stop coming back. Over time, they stop sprouting those weedy bitches. The same thing happens in your consciousness. You can do it. And I'm going to invite you to do it superpowered. This is the part where Ramadan comes in, or Lent, if you so choose. Weeding in this way, to be that attentive to your consciousness, to be that attentive to what is interrupting you, to be that attentive and aware to what is getting in the way, one of the ways you can superpower that process is through fasting. And right now during Ramadan, there's a fast happening. And so what I've noticed in fasting, and I had that experience again yesterday, because I'm fasting on Saturdays, which if you've gotten your newsletter, you've read the invitation to do the same. And for real fasting, we'll talk about another form of fasting that I'm also going to invite you to do. But for real fasting, no food, nothing, sunrise to sunset. It's almost immediate how much more in tune I am during a fast. How less noisy it is in here. It's wild. It is spiritual something. And there's a reason why fasting occurs in faith traditions throughout history, throughout the whole globe. It quiets the mess. It more easily allows you to stay centered on what is true and to notice the wonder and awe of this life. I am quite sure that is why I boo-hooed through the Arabic prayers yesterday, because I was so tuned in to the divine as a result of my fast. Superpowered contemplation. So I invite you to do for real fast, even if it's just one day a week during Ramadan. And then come break fast with us right here on Saturdays at 7. I would love to do that with you and share that beauty, yummy goodness with you. So here's the other fast, which you're going to do every day. You are going to fast from one of your weeds. Not kidding. I know it seems giggly, but I'm not kidding. You are going to fast from judgment. You're going to fast from not enoughness. You're going to fast from jealousy, from limitation, from whatever the thing is that is interrupting your dream. And you're going to do it one thought at a time. Because that's what fasting is like. It's commitment, right? It's like, oh, no, I'm actually really not going to eat. Oh, yep, still not going to eat. Oh, yep, an hour from now, still not eating. Right? That's part of the nature of fast. And you have to continually come back to that commitment. So the fast you're going to do from the weeds is you're going to pick at least one, and one is good and plenty. Remember, we're not overdoing this. So I am fasting from shame this holy season. So every time a shame spiral wants to begin in my mind, I shut her down. Every time. And I'm deeply committed to that. And I guarantee you, at the end of this holy day season, those shame spirals are going to be non-existent in my garden. I replace it with the truth. As soon as I saw, you are a child of the divine. You are here by divine appointment. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I can't believe it. No, actually, you're fucking awesome. Every time. Every time. Every time. And it requires deep commitment. And you may find yourself 15 minutes down a whatever spiral, whatever your spiral may be. You may find yourself way down the rabbit hole and have to bring yourself back, and that's okay. But bringing yourself back to the dream, to the good, to the soil you are cultivating for all the good you've ever imagined for yourself and more, it doesn't matter how far down the rabbit hole you go. That is worth coming back to. That is how you actually change your literal vibrational frequency. Because, just listen for a minute. I suck. I'm awesome. Can you hear the vibrational difference? Which one do you think is going to bring greater good in my life? It's not complicated. But it is a practice. It is a practice to choose to stay your mind on the truth that the divine life is the very center of your life and every life. Yes? So how many are in? Who's fasting? Who's fasting with me? Come on. Raise your hands. Jan, you're fasting. Put your hand up. You determine what the fast is that you need. But this is how you will superpower the manifestation of your garden of good. All right, let's anchor this in prayer. Oh, thank you, God. Thank you, divine life, that you have made this holy, incredible moment possible by giving yourself to me, through me, as me. Thank you, divine, for growing my understanding and my curiosity and my awe of how good you are as this thing called life itself, and that I too am this life myself. And because I know that to be the absolute truth without any doubt, I know that to be the truth of every being in this room right now with breath in their body, and I know that to be the truth for every being on this planet, seen and unseen, above ground and underground, because that is the truth of you, that is the glory of you, and I know it is always good. And I am wildly grateful. I am so grateful to have breath in my body and to walk this path with all of these beautiful human beings who are blossoming and calling in greater and greater good. And I know that because I said yes and they said yes, that the greater good is already unfolding on this planet right here and right now. I release these words. I plant these seeds, knowing they can only blossom beauty and love and harmony and connection and joy, bigger and better than ever. Thank you, God. Anchor this with me in prayer by saying amen, and so it is. Thank you, beloveds. I do believe we have some announcements, and I am not thinking of all that they are. So let me tell you one that I think I've told you before, but if I haven't said it and you haven't heard it yet, what time do we start next week? 4 o'clock, the new start time next week, 4 o'clock.